Now, this morning, we are continuing a conversation that we started yesterday. Yesterday, I sat here and I chat with the CEO of Frankie Tours, Mr. Michael Frank, who is also a part of that Glass Bottom Reef Boat Tour Association here in Tobago that often functions along that Store Bay, Pigeon Point, No Man's Land route. And we spoke about an incident that occurred over the weekend that we saw a video being circulated on social media of a fight happening on one of those tour boats. And this morning I have the privilege of chatting with Mr. Ricardo Alfred. Good morning and welcome.
Yes, good morning. Huh?
Now, you are here as the chairman of TADCO.
No.
You are here in what capacity this morning?
I am here this morning. I'm in separated TADCO. I am a maritime surveyor under the Ministry of, at the time was Works and Transport, so it's now under Infrastructure and Works, I believe. I've been a government appointed surveyor for the last, maybe since 2011, somewhere around there to now.
Right, so we are chatting this morning, not in TADCO's capacity, but we are chatting this morning of Ricardo, the engineer / marine surveyor.
Yes, correct, yes.
All right.
So my role and responsibility as relates to these reef boats is to ensure that they meet certain safety requirements as relates to if the engine is maintained properly, how many life jackets, the condition of the vessel, that type of stuff. Is certification I deal with as relates to issuance of a permit to operate, that type of administrative stuff I deal with. As relates to what goes on in the reef, one must understand that this is not something that has been going on for years. Huh? Over the years, I mean, I could tell you what No Man's Land was from 2018 to present. Huh?
Right.
It is a place that I venture every Sunday, along with a few jet skis and stuff like that. What is going on there is something that is going on for a number of years. What had happened, in order to deal with that situation, a committee was formed back where you had persons from the police, the Coast Guard, Pigeon Point Board, myself. You had all the various stakeholders, jet skis operator, reef tour operators. You had persons from TTAL, tourism. You had a full committee that was pledged to deal with that operation.
And when we talk about operation,
what goes on at in that whole space, that whole marine space. So,
right.
Coming out of that, you would have had the two associations being formed, in which Frankie yesterday would have been representing. He is the PRO for that Store Bay Reef Tour Association. So there's the Store Bay Reef Tour Association and the Pigeon Point Association, which would have resulted in, I don't know if folks can remember, a couple of years ago, you had booths, one in Store Bay and one in Pigeon Point entrance, where patrons would go to these booths to book a glass bottom boat. They had operated on a turn system. You had permits to put in place as relates to any activities happening in that space would have been granted permission. Any vending would have had to go through to the various divisions to get permission to be across there. That committee was disbanded, resulting in the chaos. And that is exactly what it is. The mere fact of you have this lack of political will resulting in what happens at No Man's Land.
Right, so you're saying that this committee had the role of enforcing
and also
some of the policies that were put in place as it pertains to safeguarding
the whole operation. Persons were trained, the guys who did some, customer service training, all that was provided for the guys on them, right? There was a plight now, in which we would have made a plight to the current Secretary for Agriculture, Ms. Natisha Charles Pantin, in which to reinstate this committee to deal with these issues. Now, the committee is a working committee as relates to all of the authorities are there. Again, at the time, the last committee, you had Mr. Nurse, ACP Nurse, where he would have dealt with the police aspect of it. From that same committee, we were able to get from the DPP office to give to the police how to charge people. There are several cases and there are several laws regarding this type of operation. There's the public nuisance, there's the where a constable can board a vessel, there's the harassment, operating without, with more than what you are licensed to carry. All of these are already there. The groundwork is already there. Again, maybe persons felt that, that they are not that everybody understands what really happens out there. But I can tell you that
Right, and so we're talking about not necessarily setting the policy, but the enforcement of the policy. Because when things like this happen, persons come out and say, well, there needs to be better regulation. This industry needs to be regulated. Not knowing, even from the place that I sit, that there has been regulations in place. There has been committees who have worked over time to try to put particular structures in place. But the question then lies, where does it all fall down?
Again, it requires a political will. Now, it is very easy for somebody to go and complain to their area rep to get representation, to say, well, I have a business and I want to operate in this space. And then persons would make calls to whatever and it happens. That is well and good, but when you have all of these situations that resulted in what happened there all of these committees require the political will to go on and to continue what has been happening there now.
Right, and let's talk about the environmental impact of the vending that happens over there at No Man's Land. It seems that one person went over there when they had tours, they did those picnics and stuff, and persons realize, well, hey, this seems like it could be a lucrative business for whenever the boats come over. Then you saw people who host the tours. When they host the tours, they carry across the grills and stuff with them, so that batch of persons who are on that tour, they provide food and all of that. And then that moved from the tour guides providing food for persons on their tour and, sparking the grill when they go to No Man's Land, to persons actually going there and setting up a permanent structure and now vending there. Tell us about that.
Right. So prior to COVID, now this is all before COVID, none of this was taking place. Because of the post-COVID measures that persons would have put in place to evolve their business, you would have had persons changing their tours to include a meal. Meaning that, so after you do your snorkel at the nylon pool, you do your dive and stuff like that, they include a package where you could go on No Man's Land and maybe get some food and experience No Man's Land. And it has now evolved into a very unique and dangerous situation where anything could happen. And this is all because of the lack of measures that was put in place that was never continued. And if people are free to explore and to grow their business and to but however it must be done with a certain level of control, and that is what is missing. So if you are selling food, you must have your food badge. You must seek the permission from the relevant authorities. Again, we had a permit system. Any activity happening in the marine park, the owner of that activity would have had to say exactly what he is doing, and then there would have been hours of operation. Everything was in place. So, and then again, you mentioned something there about the environmental impact. It is the same reef guys who, at the end of these events.
So we have a photo here of what the park, what No Man's Land.
This is 2018.
Okay.
Right, as you see, this is 2021. All right, and then now you're going to have the other. Right, this is what it is now, 2023 and present. Right. So you see how it has evolved without thing. Everybody who would have been operating there under these measures before would have had to have some sort of a level of permission, in which there would have been a matrix set up in terms of what these vendors have to have, with food badge, ensure the area is clean. And it's the same reef guys afterwards where I will go out there and clean up the garbage. This is done by the Sugar Lips group, Sugar, he does a lot of cleanup activities there, removing a lot of garbage and stuff like that, because that is their business. But it has now morphed into a situation where it's uncontrollable, you know.
Understood. And so you were telling us about, the whole system and the permit system and even health and safety regulations when it comes to selling food, having proper running water, having a bathroom facility available for persons that are selling food. When you see structures like this go up, it seems that one person goes, no one removes them. So everybody else is like, okay, well, this seems to be a viable means of making money.
Well, again, there's nothing wrong in persons having that vast, having that vast entrepreneurial spirit. The challenge that you have is that the authorities need to put measures in place for this type of activity. I mean, again, as I said, you had this committee that was a working committee that included all of those things. There was there were persons from tourism, the TTAL, you had the reef, the jet ski guys, you had the reef tour guys, you had divers. So everybody had an input as to how we can make the place safe and better. I strongly believe that had it not been disbanded, none of these things would have happened. Since the disbandment, you have had more jet ski incidents. You even had a death, because of persons not wearing life jackets. All of these things, if you're not wearing a life jacket, you are in violation of the parking, in which that permit would have been revoked, And people need to really come out of their space and understand that if you do not understand what happens in these type of activities, we don't understand what happens in this type of business, it is best not to say anything now and just allow persons who know to guide you,
Right. And when was the last time that this committee functioned?
2021.
Okay, that was before the election.
Yeah, 2021.
Right. And even as it pertains to moving forward, you recommended that the committee be reinstated.
Yes.
But there are talks about legislation that guide employment of persons who are on these boats, ensuring that they have actual contracts for their employment, being paid NIS, have particular working schedules, and that the persons who are on the boat are licensed and approved to be on the boat.
Right.
Sometimes you see a situation where, as I was saying to Mr. Frankie yesterday, a guy might come down on the beach bareback and say, let me go and help out Frankie today, and they're on the boat and they are not attired well. Sometimes they are using alcohol or other illicit drugs while they are on these boats and creating an environment that doesn't have a positive reflection on Tobago tourism product. So from where you sit, tell us a bit about that.
So under the same committee, those guys had in each one of the reef boats had uniforms. They were trained in customer service. Each one of these guys, Frankie and whoever, all of them had uniforms saying some of them will have the name tag, some of them will have the logo of who they're representing, right? Again, just to be very clear, persons operating these boats must have their captain license. On the license and the permit that I do the survey on, they will tell me exactly how many crew members they have. And it's written on it now. What is going to happen now in the new surveys going forward? Each boat will have to have their license number of passengers printed on board that vessel. And again, the public as well need to understand that before you go on these type of crafts, you are entitled to ask the person to produce the insurance. You are entitled to ask the person, let me see your license. At the end of the day, you're dealing with your life. We are just very fortunate that there have been no really major incidents as relates to these reef boats. But if the public needs to understand that they can ask for certain things. It has now moved away from a tour into a lime, into a vibe, and then the type of music that they play. All of these activities would have been documented from each owner as to what they are doing, the hours of work and stuff like that. As you speak about the NIS and the health surcharge and these things, there are authorities to come in and deal with this, because every company is supposed to file the NIS and these things, and pay whatever tax or whatever. So it falls back again to the authorities. You have field officers that's supposed to be doing these things. If persons feel aggrieved that they're not been properly compensated and this type of thing. Again, they can come to the maritime service if you are a crew member and you believe that you are treated unfairly, and we will take in the matter, you know. I mean, there are laws to deal with ILO, the International Maritime Organization, deals with labor and all these type of things and proper compensation. And again, if persons believe that they're not properly compensated, they can have a conversation and we will take it from there.
Understood. Well, we want to thank you so much for offering that clarification and, bringing that level of expertise to the conversation. As Mr. Frankie would have said yesterday, sometimes everybody tends to get blamed for, a few persons who have a poor reflection on the industry. So I hope that there can be ongoing conversations with the Division of Agriculture and,
I am quite confident that the Secretary will be successful in what she wants to achieve as relates to that space. Because I know she's very passionate about that type of activity happening in that environment. So I'm quite confident that some measure will come out of it.
Excellent. Well, we look forward to hearing about that as well. And we also look forward to, a system that becomes a lot more proactive as opposed to being reactive.
Yes.
Well, guys, we're going to take a quick break right here and we'll be back right after this. So, see you soon.
It's a brand new morning, rise up to a brand new day.